to the Thursday episode of the 905 podcast and the 905 Roundup. I am Roland Tanner.
I am Joel McLeod.
And we've got a couple of good stories today, and it's the rotten boroughs, I don't know. The big story out of Mississauga. We were bemoaning a couple of weeks ago that we found it difficult to hear about some of important things happening in some of the 905 cities, but a big story has certainly hit in Mississauga, and an important one. Joel, why don't you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so in Mississauga, Councillor Karen Ras, I should say former Councillor Karen Ras, as she's resigned basically over excessive bullying. Yeah, the CBC is reporting that basically her car was vandalized in the City Hall parking venue area for councillors, the reserve area, and that over 8 times over the last 2 years, and that the police, the CBC is reporting that the police identified her comrade, her colleague, fellow councillor Ron Starr as the lead suspect in the vandalism. The shocking story is that the supposed integrity commissioner for the city of Mississauga did absolutely nothing to address her concerns. The mayor's office did nothing to address the concerns. Mayor Crombie was saying that she was cooperating, although I'm not entirely certain if the integrity commissioner wasn't doing the investigating. I mean, I guess she was cooperating with the police investigation. But in the end, yeah, Karen Ras decides that she basically says, well, I've had enough of this. I'm out. I'm done. Why am I doing this? And she's resigning, which...
Yeah, and she resigned like a month ago before this story came out. So she quit for no and made no better announcement. What's happened, and the fact that the councillor in question, Starr, was allegedly caught on video doing this.
Yeah. I'm not going to get into the he said, she said about it, because it is an investigation. The police Peel Regional Police are investigating it. But I think that where we kind of caught wind of this is the fact that the Integrity Commissioner is an office that is enabled underneath law to investigate breaches of conduct by fellow councillors. I mean, that the murkiness of it, you can't really fire. There's no mechanism to fire a city councillor or a mayor. Like there's no party caucus. There's no leader discipline. There's no party whip office or anything like that. It's entirely kind of an honor code system at the municipal level. So this integrity commissioner is supposed to be the way for everybody to police themselves, and the system just completely failed former Councillor Ras.
Yeah, I don't understand the point where police or whoever said to the city, okay, we've got pictures of one of your councillors keying another councillor's car. At that point, there is only one. The next course of action is, well, first I probably then immediately hold a vote on asking the councillor to take a lead and vote on that. It's up to him to take that. We do, but also then to immediately pass it to the integrity. Now, clearly that didn't happen, and as a result, a councillor is clearly a victim in the whole thing, has resigned and is no longer serving her. That's a big deal, and Bonnie Crombie is, I just find the quote here, over the last few days I've reflected deeply on this, should have done more for Karen. And yeah, no kidding. If you knew that this was not just, there's very serious allegations with very clear, according to what's in the CBC, some fairly clear evidence being involved. You got to act, and you got to defend the victims of bullying and harassment. There's been rumours, I understand, that Mississauga has, as so many councils, and actually my initial tweet on this last week was, welcome Mississauga to the long list of dysfunction 905 council. And the rumour is that there's been some ongoing toxicity. It tends not to be seen in the council chamber in Mississauga, but between councillors away from them. But yeah, it's all too familiar and elsewhere.
Well, it raises a question really of how, are these people above reproach? I mean, that's the question. What kind of attitude or culture would be permitted that a councillor feels it's permissible to go and key your colleague's vehicle? Because I presume over some kind of political disagreement. I can't imagine what would qualify that level of action. But that's the thing. It's supposed to be. This is politics. You might not agree with everyone around the table, but at the end of the day, you're supposed to work with them. I find that it's shocking to me, and what gets me is the fact that a councillor has resigned. Like literally, they've been bullied and intimidated out of public office. That to me is frightening in our democracy. That somebody is able to intimidate a fellow elected colleague to just have them say, well, screw this. The job's not worth it. The price that I'm paying for this job is not worth it. I'm out. I'm done. And quite frankly, no, I don't blame her. I really don't. It's clear that sorry, I just cut you off there. But it fits a pattern of the greatest toxicity. Often, I'm not saying always, but very, very often, the greatest displayed by some older male, white university councillors towards younger, newer female councillors. I think it's completely legitimate to point that out. I mean, I've seen it kind of with my own eyes. We're seeing it kind of with our own eyes in Hamilton at the moment, in that the councillors who are least popular with the incumbents are newer and fresher faces, both women in terms of Maureen Wilson and Anne. To extent, I think we saw it too in Burlington, where Marianne Mead Ward for a long time was on the receiving end of some incredible levels of toxicity directed at her, which, again, it's okay to disagree with your colleagues. It's okay not to like your colleagues. But this is a different level. This is not a simple disagreement. This is intimidation. This is political intimidation, and it is unacceptable in any shape, way, or form. It's unacceptable that it is by white men directed at women. I mean, it's misogyny. It's political misogyny, if you want. If you want to call it out. It just really upsets me, and it just really gets me the wrong way that this would be allowed to happen. And the fact that supposedly the mechanisms to stop this completely failed. And at some point, that's where it takes real political leadership to say, this isn't right. We need to stop it. And the thing is, if the mayor knew about it, it does come back to her, because I mean, if you think about it, she's the chair of the board. She's the chair of city council. She's the one who has to referee. She chairs the meetings. She has to referee the meetings, keep the agenda going, keep the city council on the business of the city. Why wouldn't she exercise her power, the power that she does have, to kind of discipline Ron Starr? And that's the thing. If the city councils are incredibly weak, then my God, like how does anything ever get done?
Yeah, we saw this in Hamilton with the Terry Whitehead story, in which, after being away from council for a year, he came back, was then finally reprimanded in regard to the way he dealt with staff. Council didn't want to do it. His hand was kind of forced. Several councillors had jumped to his defence, but were kind of forced, if I'm remembering rightly, by the Integrity Commissioner in Hamilton's judgment to kind of then say, okay, well, yeah, fine, we'll punish him. It's councils do a really bad job of kind of policing themselves, unfortunately.
Well, they do. And maybe that's the fault of the structure of council. Like, if you think about it, the council is meant to be some kind of, we don't encourage party politics to get in there, kind of for good reasons. But in a case like this, a party structure would help immediately, because if you have a caucus, it's
caucus will fight.
Well, I mean, here's the thing:
if you're embarrassing them, yeah.
But if you do have a caucus of 2 or 3, it's easy to discipline the lone rogue wolf. If they aren't, then they're all kind of held accountable. I think we're seeing across the 905, this role of integrity commissioner is incredibly ham-fisted and weak. It was created almost as an afterthought rather than an actual way to police and maintain decorum. I mean, we've seen, as you said, we've seen in Hamilton, they use it to go after citizen volunteers. We've seen it used kind of as an afterthought when outside political pressure says, no, we really need to look at the conduct of a city councillor. Here in Mississauga, we don't know why it wasn't used, but it wasn't used for 2 years, and that's deeply troubling. And it tells me that this is one of those roles that It provides cover to elected officials because they get to say, "Oh, I can't do anything. The integrity commissioner is investigating." And two, they're completely useless entities. Like they at the end of the day, they get turned over to. They get turned over to the decision making gets turned over to the city council, and the city council gets to debate it and go back and forth and all this stuff, and they get to ultimately decide to reprimand a councillor or not. I think,
and I don't think they're inherently. I don't think it's a requirement. I don't think it's they can do a good job. Integrity commissioners can, and I think they vary in quality. I think what we saw in Hamilton was the appointment of an integrity commissioner who was a former employee of the city. It's like, well, that's iffy right there. The other thing is, it's like, these are private businesses who are wanting to keep their contracts going.
They don't have to be.
Temptation with...
They don't have to be
a
contract, but...
They're in essence a consultant of the city, and like consultants, I often feel, whenever I look at the endless supplies of consultants who work with municipalities, it's amazing how often they give the result that the council wanted to get when they appointed them. So, and I'm not saying there's anything deliberate there. I just think that's the way that the human mind tends to work.
See, here's where I look at. Like, I look at this coming back to Mississauga. I look at this and say, okay, so if Councillor Ras is coming out of her office, going home each day, and she's finding her car keyed up in the parking lot, at a certain point, you can go to the police and say, investigate it. We have security cameras in there for our safety. Go check the tapes, see who's doing it. The police will say, yeah, we're going to say it's Councillor Ron Starr. That's who we think it is. Okay, great. Present the evidence, and you take it to city council and say, I want to reprimand this councillor. You can do it. You can strip him of any. You can't remove him from office, but you can't say you don't get to sit on any committees, and your voting is very conditional. Toronto City Council did it to Mayor Rob Ford. They stripped him basically of his powers down to a bare minimum. Like, it's almost like a shadow mayor by the end of his term for his conduct. So the city can do it. It ultimately is. You have to kind of pressure your fellow council to say, we need to act on this and do it in a public and transparent manner. I guess my problem with these integrity commissioner offices is that they've and at least in the 905, our end of the 905, they transform into a political cover for not doing anything. I mean, let's face it. I don't think Ron Starr, if he is guilty of it, allegedly, whoever did it because they said, I can get away with it. I'm not going to lose my job. I'm not going to be held to account, because I'll just say this: the integrity commissioner just twiddles his thumb and spins his wheels, and we're always in an investigation for however long until the next election, and then we drop that and we move on. So it's a political cover machine, is what these things turn into. It's the same as the ethics commissioner offices that we see in the federal government. They don't do anything. They're there to provide political cover and political ammunition for opposition members to go after the government of the day. That's all they are, and they're tax-funded vehicles too.
Well, it's
end of rant.
That's probably a good end of rant. I mean, I something is not right. I mean, something is seriously not right here with this specific. Something is generally not right. And I know we spoke to Joey Coleman a few months ago, probably about 6 months ago now, and he spoke to the need for kind of like a province-wide ombudsman, much tighter control over council behaviour. And I really think we do need something like that, because it's. Yeah. I'm trying to find the city hall in Ontario that isn't kind of messed up one way or the other. And it comes back to things, we're seeing the same things again and again and again. Toxic councils, just shoddy behaviour. Shoddy behaviour that is clearly not acceptable, just being not dealt with in anything like a proper way.
If this was held, pick any Fortune 500 company. If this came out, this was happening at a board table, I guarantee you that board member would be removed from their office before the end of the day. And
the bottom line is if it came out in Mississauga, the fact is it didn't come out until too late.
Right.
If this story had not been basically hidden until the councillor resigned, it would have been entirely different. Why on earth was it not made public. It should have been. It would have helped everybody involved if it was public.
You know what? Let's call it a break there for our sponsor, and then we will talk about more things that should be made public after our break. And we're back. So, Roland, we were talking about things kept behind closed doors in municipalities. What other municipality has been keeping things hidden behind closed doors in the 905?
Well, it seems to be a bit of a developing theme in Burlington. There's some big decisions are made behind closed doors. For a variety of reasons, some of which are unavoidable, just the way the law works. A huge number of decisions in Burlington end up getting made behind closed doors when it's to do with development. And it's because things get appealed, then once you're appealed, it's a legal situation. But what that means is that councillors are not on the record or held accountable for the decisions they make regarding development, which is the issue that most of them were elected on. Certainly a significant number of them were elected on. So that's been secret all the way from 2018 and made worse by the, or exacerbated by the situation with the downtown interim control bylaw, because it just meant that everything was appealed or ignored. But we're also seeing some really big decisions about financial outlays, big purchases of property, also happening entirely behind closed doors. And while in-camera meetings are a normal part of council routine, some things have to be done that way. The extent to which they're used, and the extent to which they are used as a kind of blanket way to stop any information coming out to the public about what the city is planning to do, is new, I think. And so I wrote an article today on our website, 905.ca, about the announcement yesterday by the city that it's moving to the next steps in its plans to purchase the former Robert Bateman High School. Bateman was declared surplus by the Halton District School Board back in 2017. That was a whole huge controversy at the time that anybody who was involved in it, even in the smallest way, will remember well. Basically, it was kind of like a fight for which school gets closed, and Bateman lost. Won't get into the rights and wrongs of that, but that's the background of why the school is why the property is now basically up for sale by the school board. This is not the first time that this kind of decision has been made by City Council. Back in 2009, the former General Brock High School was a portion of the lands there were purchased by the city for $9 million. And that followed like a huge and very lengthy public discussion and debate about whether the city should use a big chunk of money to buy lands to keep them in perpetuity for the city, or whether they should give up that chance and run the risk that the land is developed, highly likely. So we've got the same thing here. So instead of 9 million, we're dealing with XXX million, and probably in the tens of millions of dollars, I think, is highly likely, because they're buying not just land but also property, plus it's well over a decade of real estate price rises in the interim. So we're dealing with a big chunk of money that the city is committing to spend, that is, just not receiving any proper public analysis or assessment, because it's been done in camera meetings.
Well, this is also,
and it's actually.
I was just going to say, there's also a footnote on this story as well, that recently the city has also made a major purchase of a downtown park from a private shareholder. The Lions Club owned a sizable piece of land down in the downtown core. The city recently purchased it. Now they got a deal for it because of an agreement made back, I believe, in 2017 as well, with the Lions Club there. However, that's a major purchase that just happened. Like, the city's going on this buying spree around the city.
With very little public knowledge,
Right.
very little public debate, no real. And part of this is down to the situation with the media in the 905 as a whole. That maybe these stories, COVID doesn't help. It doesn't help that council meetings are not like council meetings used to be. They're being held on Zoom. The public as a whole seems to have kind of given up on delegation to a large degree. So the kind of the city's kind of getting an easy ride right now, but is also doing a good job of kind of hiding things away from dealers. So we're told that there was a discount on the Lions Club land. Awesome. What was it? And what was that? What is that land worth now? I mean, we know that right across the road from that parquet is going to be I can't remember how tall, but it's a significant high rises going up across there. The land values in Ward 2 in downtown Burlington are very, very high. So even at a discount, that's a big chunk of money that
Right.
they probably spent for that land. And again, there's no doubt that the public will have wanted to keep that park. However, just saying the public wants it and the public should get it and the public would accept the cost and the price of it are all three very different things.
Well,
So when there's no public oversight and no public discussion of these things, we're not really doing a good job of acting in the public interest.
The other aspect of the story that caused us to kind of our ears to perk up was the fact that the city is looking to go into its reserve funds to purchase this plot of land, the Robert Bateman site, which this seems to be an uncomfortable theme popping up at Burlington City Council, is dipping into the reserve funds. Now, the reserve funds is meant for an emergency. It's meant for situations kind of like if listeners of the 905 might remember in Burlington a few years ago, there's unexpected flooding in the eastern part of the city that caused a lot of damage and needed to be a lot of maintenance and repair work needed to be done to city infrastructure to fix it, as well as there was a lot of property damage to homeowners that the city chipped in a bit to help alleviate that. That, I believe, would have come out of some of the reserve fund. At least that's what the reserve fund would be intended for. It's not meant to be dipped into to buy land on a whim. And I do think it's on a whim because there's been no consultation about this. There's no public debate. There's no public forums. There's no timeline to say, can we get public a feel for what the public wants. I mean, if you say, hey, do you want to buy green space and keep a parkland that you've been enjoying? Everybody say, yeah, we want that. If you say it's going to cost you $20 or $30 million, oh, wait.
The other side of this deal is, yeah, you can have that, but you might risk losing LaSalle Park next year.
Right.
Because that's the next huge story, whatever, decision that is heading towards this council, is that they need to find solution with Hamilton over LaSalle Park. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Burlington, LaSalle Park is a very nice, much-loved park on Burlington Bay. There's a marina there as well. Lots of events happen there in the summer. There's a venue. The lands actually belong to Hamilton, dating back to when Hamilton actually included what's now Aldershot, which is part of Burlington. And when Burlington got Aldershot, Hamilton kept that land in its ownership and subsequently leased the land to Burlington for $1 a year. Now, that kind of long-term lease, which was agreed in the 80s, is coming to an end in 3. So this year is the year they need to find a solution. It doesn't help that there's an election. And there's already been kind of, in 2020, there was a motion passed by the council that, I think you can kind of interpret as, pay up Burlington, where Hamilton directed staff to look at its other options, including, selling, developing, doing whatever it wants with that land. So if you've already dipped into the reserve funds, because no doubt that land is worth a lot of money.
There's no land. There's no land in Burlington that is not worth a lot of money.
Well, yeah.
Let's be honest here.
That also is true.
I understand that. I know that the plan, at least according to the media released by the city of Burlington, the plan is to have Brock University put part of its teaching college at the Robert Bateman site, but that would just be one small portion. On the mayor's website, she posted a conceptual floor plan of what would be happening at Robert Bateman High. One part of it is Brock University. Another part would be City of Burlington, which I presume that's the part that would be that's already owned and run by the city of Burlington. That would be Centennial Pool. There'd be a section that you could put the Burlington Public Library, a wing or an office there. A small place for the tech place, which is that's a part with the Burlington Economic Development Council, if I'm not our committee, I'm not mistaken. Then a small section would remain in use for the Halton District School Board. Not sure what that is. And this is all proposed. Like no contracts have been signed. No leases have been signed or fees agreed to yet. This is all up in the air. And that's, to me, I find this is. It sounds like it's all good and whatnot, but what happens? Mike, we were talking before. I worry about what if Brock says, you know what, our program has expanded. 5 years down the road. No, we need to leave. We need a bigger place.
Yeah, I mean they're leaving Hamilton, so why wouldn't they leave Burlington?
Right.
Circumstances change. Someone made a good point on Twitter today that it's not the worst place in Burlington to get to on public transit, but it's far from the best as well. So if you're as an education place for students who currently are in downtown Hamilton, it's kind of a downgrade in terms of being accessible by transit. And the ultimate point about all this is, we're just throwing lots and lots of what ifs, maybes, could this happen? We don't know, but that's the thing. Nobody knows because it's all being discussed in private. All these questions should be discussed in the open with an idea of what the cost is. I mean, frankly, I don't think what they're planning for that site is very exciting. So It's like Brock University teacher training college. For whatever reason, every medium-sized city wants to have a bit of a university in it because it looks good and it makes everybody feel good. I think it's one of the most pathetic and childish things that cities do. Burlington's had this problem before with McMaster, and it felt a lot of good it's done in the city. But whatever. So we get a little bit of Brock and we get to brag about that. We move the library, which is a small branch library, in there. Well, that's just 6 of one, half a dozen. Again, you're moving from one plaza to another place. And sure, I'm sure there would be other wonderful that would happen there. But are those wonderful things worth the price tag?
Yep.
Well, taking a big lump out of city reserves, and sure, there are reserve funds specifically for buying land when it becomes that's what it's there for. But the city has already spent on this Bateman project half of one of its facts. It's already committed $3 million for preliminary Bateman work, due diligence and exciting things like that, and that has come out. Oh, let me find the name for it here. It was one of the capital reserve funds, let's put it that. That $3 million amounts to over 50% of that entire fund, which is currently at $5.9 million. So there'll be $2.9 million left. Again, I'm not saying with any of this that this is inherently a bad decision. What I'm saying is these aren't decisions that should just be made pretty much, with the wave of a hand in a council meeting, with no public, no real discussion, no real, until today, not a lot of coverage in media, and it's part of a trend. We saw it with the Lions Club, we've seen it with other,
We saw it with the Pride.
It feels like this city clerk is a lot happier to go into private sessions than previous city clerks.
We saw it with the Pride. The rainbow flag crosswalk debate that happened last year, that everybody in Burlington was ecstatic for it. They were very much in favor for it. The mayor was tweeting out about how, pick the spots for the crosswalks to go, and there were 6 or 7 sites across Burlington. They were all picked and ranked, and boom, we got our crosswalk sites. And then it came to, okay, let's authorize the payment, and that turned into a bit of a kerfuffle where, again, the idea of budgeting this over the course of a number of years so that you wouldn't get all the crosswalks at once, you get them spread out over 4 or 5 years with each city's yearly annual budget. We dipped into the reserve funds for that to pay for one massive painting campaign. And if our listeners remember, councillors, 3 councillors were a bit besmirched or hinted at that they were against the crosswalks, when in fact they were more for the fiscal accountability side of it. They didn't approve of the pay structure.
Mayor Mead Ward posted a tweet which kind of implied they'd voted against it when it was the way that the money was being raised, or the money that was being used, which is a real issue. And I
mean that's something that the city council should be doing, is accountability of how are we spending our money in our city. The reserve fund is not a piggy bank to go shopping around. The fact is, the Robert Bateman site is expensive to purchase. The idea of it back in the day, as you said in your article, before Mike Harris came in, the idea was that you could get it back for $1. The city would sell the land to the school boards for $1 essentially, and then if a school board wanted to was no longer going to use it, you sell it back to the municipality for $1. Mike Harris changed those rules, and now that land has to be sold at the fair market value. Well, as anybody in the 905 knows, that fair market value is not chump change. The fact of the matter is, we might have to just say, nope, that's not going to happen. Maybe that's a provincial issue. Maybe that's something we should be taking up with the current provincial government, or with the NDP or the Liberals for the next upcoming provincial election. But this is serious. This is kind of what you're about. Is about making sure that you spend our money fiscally, prudently, responsibly. This isn't it. And especially the thing is, you don't do it behind closed doors. If you do it behind closed doors, it's a sign that you don't want a debate. And
I keep on coming back to the General Brock decision in 2009 under a council that I was no particular fan of, the Mayor Cam Jackson. Many of the people who retired or lost their jobs in 2018 were in that council. I wasn't, not a huge fan. However, that process over General Brock was very, very public. People were involved, people delegated, the community got involved. There was discussion about, this is what we'll have to add to the tax bill potentially to buy that land. Is the community willing to have like a special fund, a special levy just to pay for that land? Mm-hmm. None of this is happening this time. It's just like, oh, no, we'll pay for it. Don't worry about it. It's fine. It's going to be great. I'm not even sure that it is that great, what's being proposed. It's like, it doesn't really set my world entirely alight. I mean, it's, for the right price, it'd be fantastic. But
I don't know. I don't know the need
is it what we want?
I just don't know the need of it. Like, you haven't even told me that this is an issue. That the need to purchase this site is an issue that we need to we really need to fight for. Like, we don't need. I don't think the city needs the building for any purpose. And in terms of the green space, if you're afraid of a developer coming in and developing it into just a high rise, I get that, but you can put conditions in it that we want more green space there.
And the green space of the land, so one chunk of it is not up for sale, is Frontenac Park. One chunk of it belongs to Ascension Catholic Elementary School. That's not up for sale. Another chunk of it is up for sale here, but the majority of the site has a building on it. So maybe the city should be buying the land, selling off the building to a developer because it's already built on, and adding that green space to Frontenac Park. I don't know. These are all things that maybe should be discussed, but which are not being discussed. I'm not saying that any of these things are right or wrong. It's the lack of discussion that there's really the sticking point, and it's not good enough. This council, unlike actually Mississauga, which has been back in the council chamber for months and months and months, this council voted before Christmas to not even begin looking at the possibility of having in-person council meetings again, which seems, the same mayor, by the way, voted to ask that schools reopen on January the 7th, but she's not willing to sit in a council chamber with her colleagues and a couple of delegates. Spare me. We can put up screens. We can make that entirely safe. And all the councillors are meeting people. They're putting pictures of them having dinner at the Queen's Head. They're going out in public. So what on earth is it about the council chamber that is still dangerous? It's nonsense. So this kind of behaviour, which is frankly a bit shady and a bit dishonest, it's time that this was challenged. And, I'm challenging it, I guess. I guess we both are. So, yeah.
All right. I'd say that's where we should end this episode. with a challenge to the powers that be. All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in this week for another roundup. We'll be back next week with more of the 905er. Thanks, everyone, and take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
That's it for this episode of the 905er. Thank you for listening. As always, you can send us your feedback, thoughts, and concerns or ideas for future episodes to our email, info@905er.ca. We'd love to hear from you. You can help us keep the 905er going by financially supporting us through Patreon as well as PayPal. Visit us at 905er.ca and click on the support tab. As well, links are in the show notes for your convenience. Lastly, you can find us on social media. Search for _905er on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So long for now. See you next time.
Looking to make the most out of this life and optimize your personal wellness? Then check out the Natural Man Podcast. Join me, host Mike C., as we explore all areas of human wellness, physical, mental, and emotional. Learn strategies to optimize your own well-being and be in the driver's seat of your own health. Remember, your doctor works for you. Learn biohacks, neurohacks, ways to improve sleep, and ways to optimize your body and your mind. Check us out on Apple, Spotify, the Fountain app, and at naturalmanpodcast.com.